Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM right here in beautiful Nanaimo. We are so delighted that you joined us today. In the Zoom booth with us today is Dave Hingley. This is going to be another one of those kinds of conversation where we do a deep dive into having a condition other than COVID-19. You know, we've been showcasing a couple of our guests who have been, working with hospice for a long time, or they had breast cancer. Dave Hingley is a survivor of Parkinson's disease. And so we're going to explore and unpack what that has felt like for him. I hope you are going to enjoy this show. Hey, Dave, how are you, my friend?
Hi, Kathy. Good. How are you doing today?
I'm fantabulous. Thank you so very much. You know, over the last few years, you all of a sudden found yourself working at a job that you loved, and the next minute your body started behaving differently. What happened, Dave? Can you start to unpack it for our audience to get an understanding of how quickly this came upon for you?
Yeah, well, actually, it sort of came in two hits for me. I had an arthritis condition which started things off, and was getting around that, had a hip replacement done, and then I got hit with Parkinson's, and it was kind of a shock for me. So,
Oh, I'm sure it was. But was the hip just a natural, the thing that needed to be replaced? Were you having problems with it before, or was it contingent to it? Like, how did the two of them gel together, or did they, or they just were separate things that piggybacked?
they're side by side, separate events, and I've got osteoarthritis,
Yeah.
and I've now had 4 joints replaced, and dealing with Parkinson's at the same time. So it's been quite an adventure.
So how did you start to see the symptoms transpire?
Well, it started off actually at work. I noticed just in my own self that I was having trouble remembering things.
Yeah.
And I was getting agitated very easily, and I'm usually quite a laid back person. And I was actually getting quite angry at little things.
That's not like you at all. You're one of the sweetest, kindest people on the planet. I can't even imagine you having an anger moment ever.
It was all under the breath.
Yes. There you go.
And, along with that, I was having moments of fear, like even talking to new people, like customers.
Yeah.
I was afraid to approach them and, talk to them. Another thing I was noticing was I raced sailboats, and I took a couple of tumbles actually.
A couple of tumbles on the boat itself, or
Yes,
fell
yeah.
overboard, or?
I didn't fall overboard, but I lost my balance and could have hurt myself quite badly. But I was fine, but it was kind of an eye opener of what's going on.
Yeah.
More than anything. It sort of came down to these things were being noticed, and I was talking to my doctor a little bit about it. Or actually, no, before I talked to my doctor about it, I talked to a customer who was a doctor, retired, and he saw my handwriting, which was terrible. It was usually terrible, but this was worse.
And a lot of people might take that terrible handwriting and be a bit concerned of that, because lots of people have bad handwriting. But
Yeah.
something was really different about this for you.
It was very small and very hard to read, and I couldn't. My hand wasn't working properly.
Right.
So
Were you seeing some tremors or anything like that, or?
Not yet, not at that time. But he suggested that I see a doctor about it, and sure enough, I did, and I got my referral, and onwards from there.
You must have been really frightened when you first, didn't know why your hands were doing what they were doing, and that you were feeling, different emotions that you weren't really accustomed to having as a normal.
It was very strange, actually. And, it was starting to get to a point before I saw the specialist. I got my referral through the doctor. Prior to seeing the specialist, I was having problems with my memory as well. So all of these, unbeknownst to me, were symptoms of Parkinson's. I had my own fears that it was, one of the big 3, being, MS, ALS, Parkinson's. Yeah, so, and I got the Parkinson's award when I saw the specialist.
So when you went to go and see the specialist, what kind of testing did he have you do in order to really do a proper diagnosis of what was happening for you?
Well, he basically, and it's not funny, but it's interesting that, I mean, I can see a person with Parkinson's, pick them off the street, and I'm not a doctor or a specialist.
Yeah.
But basically, he watched my gait, he checked my balance, he checked my handwriting. You know, there was no blood tests or brain tests. It was all just symptomatic stuff. And, you know, I had a good portion of the symptoms of Parkinson's, and he said 99.9, you've got Parkinson's.
Wow. When
So
when he first said that to you, Dave, what happened for you inside?
I just felt emptied. You know, I didn't know what to say. I was like, so of course I just kind of put a blocker up, I guess, and yeah, and then I this was down in Victoria. I got myself home and went into my work, and then it sort of hit me, and I you know, talked to one of my good close workmates, and just he gave me a big hug, and I just lost it.
I bet. I
So
bet. I can
you
only imagine that kind of a shock to your system, because all of a sudden you know your life is going to change. How it's going to change, you may not know yet, but it's going to change. So what
exactly.
happened next after you started having some of the initial symptoms that were
Well,
relatively mild? It sounds like from the onset.
yeah, it definitely was fairly mild. It was mentally it was the hardest part, I think, but I
Mm,
got I was had some prescriptions for an anti anxiety drug, basically. I got that and a couple of Parkinson's. I guess I'll call them Parkinson's drugs. I can't even remember what they are because I'm on different ones now.
yeah.
Um, and it kind of settled things down a little bit. And then I started thinking about, you know, okay, my future. And I asked the doctor, I said, how many years do you think I'll be walking around and, you know, okay for? And he said, probably you'll notice some big changes in about 10 or 12 years that, you know, you might have to be in a wheelchair or something like that. He goes, but you just don't know because
And it's
everybody's got a
different for
different.
every person too, isn't it? It's not
Correct.
like most diseases. As an individual, it affects us all so very differently.
That's right. And Parkinson's is a funny one too. It's the symptoms are all different for people, the sufferers of the disease, all
Yeah.
have different symptoms. I mean, there's a laundry basket of different symptoms in there.
Could
Um,
you share with us what some of those symptoms might be for people?
yeah. Well, I wrote it down here. So, one the biggest one and the scariest one for me now is the walking, because I do have a balance issue.
Yeah.
You know, along with getting new joints, and then you throw balance issues in there, it's kind of a challenge. But you also have a thing they call as freezing. So you go to take a step and your feet don't move. You just
Oh
panic.
goodness. So
Yeah.
like it literally, your body will not put that step forward.
And it puts you in danger because you start losing your balance as well when that happens. And if you see Parkinson's folks, they're out there, you know, walking, and you'll notice their stride is very short and kind of choppy.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, mine is sort of that way. My stride's not that bad yet, but my balance is going. And I had a couple of freezing episodes. One in which I fell onto a dock
Oh my God.
and ended up with a little issue with my back and in the hospital. So,
So, and when you fell, because you were already still, your body was still recovering from your hip replacement.
well, this one was actually, you know, my knees went on me, and I was walking with a cane.
Yeah.
And yeah, I froze and then lost my balance, and over I went, and I twisted and you know, had a bulge disc in my back.
My God.
So you know, that's not the Parkinson's that got me. It created something else.
Of course. Yeah. There's a piggyback motion of, your balance goes, you fall, something else is your body, is not reacting to the Parkinson's, but a deliverable of the Parkinson's in the sense that
Yes.
it made you more
And,
vulnerable when you came to the ground. Yeah.
yeah. Now, of course, the other commonality, a common thing is the shaking.
Yeah.
And I've got quite a bit of shaking now. It's not 24/7, but it sometimes goes from, you know, it's my right arm.
Mm-hmm.
and eventually it goes through your whole body basically. And like I do get sometimes when I just have to keep calm, but I get internal shakes almost. Feels like my whole core is shaking. It's pretty miserable.
So when you say it feels like your core is shaking, it's not,
It's like a
it's like the body itself from the inside is
right
not cooperating with the rest of you. It's an inner, like your
quiver.
lungs, your quiver, your hips, your stomach, like all of that stuff begins to move on the inside. And it may not, as you said, it's not visual necessarily, but that's what you feel on the inside.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
right?
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that I'm clarifying and understanding exactly
Yeah.
what you might be going through, because, and you also said a moment ago, that there's that the tremor, you said it's in your right arm, right?
Yeah.
Is it in your body and how it manifestates in your life? Is it progressing to, like, one day it's the right side predominantly, and then another day it might be, a left leg or the left side of your body? Or is it traditionally just sort of stay, and as it gets worse, for lack of better words, my prayer is it never does,
Yeah.
but as it gets worse, that's when it starts to go through the rest of the body for a shake? So it's
That's
not,
possible, and that's
does that make
a
sense?
possibility. Some people don't even get tremors.
Oh,
I
that's
think
interesting.
60 or 70% do,
Yeah.
and but the rest, just have some of the other symptoms. Which, like I said, there's still more of those, but
So let's go into a few more of those. By the way, if you have just tuned in, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to CHLY 101.7 FM. I'm Cathy Holmes. I'm your host for Act 3. Thank you for tuning in and for joining us. Dave Hingley is with us today in the Zoom booth. And so we're unpacking his experiences with Parkinson's disease. So thanks for joining us and tuning in. So Dave, some more of those symptoms would include...
well, I'll go with one of the dangerous ones is swallowing disorder,
Okay.
because that can lead to choking and it can lead to pneumonia. Um, the thing about Parkinson's is the common thing they say is you don't die of Parkinson's, you die with Parkinson's. But what happens is, so it's not going to kill you in its own, but what it does to you can kill you. The most common things that happen to people are choking and falling.
Yeah, yeah. And as we get older, falling is already at the top of the list. Is
That's right.
Parkinson's, and for lack of better words, an over 50 disease, or, can it strike at any time?
It can strike at any time. It's more common in people over 60.
Mm-hmm.
However, I was low 50s when I had a diagnosis. Well, actually, it was, yeah.
Yeah, you're a
So
pretty young guy.
it was like 6 years ago, I guess I was diagnosed. But tracing back, I can tell I was having a few things that kind of led me to, they were symptoms that I didn't notice
Yeah, I think
prior
that
to
that
that.
happens for a lot of people when it comes to diseases in the body, is that we might not be able to have a pinpoint of what it is, but looking back, hindsight can be 20/20 on some of those early symptoms.
Right. And, like I say, that some people get it in their 20s.
Yeah. Well, Michael J.
Generally,
Fox actually was only, he was a young guy. I worked with Michael Fox many, many years ago. We did a lot of television together in my early career, in broadcast, not broadcasting actually, but in television. And, it was, when he was diagnosed, it was certainly quite a shock to everyone, because he
yeah,
was pretty healthy. He wasn't, he was a regular, normal, everyday family man, and bam, like you, it just came upon him.
yeah, and he was only, I think, 29 years old when he first got diagnosed.
Yeah.
And,
And then
basically, he wasn't showing that many symptoms, so he chose to carry on and not to say anything for several years. But, he's had a slow progression, but when it hits you younger, it seems to take longer. When it hits a 70-year-old person, it goes fairly quickly through them. So that
yeah,
seems to be the case anyway.
yeah.
My experience.
I am surprised for how many people actually in our community have Parkinson's. I'm not sure what the stats are, the demographics, but there seems to be a higher number of people that are actually finding that diagnosis. How do you manage your life in having Parkinson's now? You said you had it for about 6 years. We talked about a little bit about the early days, and it wasn't really presenting in a big way. Over the
Right.
6 years, you've seen a lot of changes in your body, though. Can you share with our audience some of those changes?
Well, yeah. I mean, what I did, I basically took my life and decided to go on cruise control a little bit and enjoy my mobility while I've got it. So I did a lot of traveling. I kept sailing and lived on my boat and basically took some time off my career, which I'm basically resigned from now. But just with my balance getting worse, my memory isn't as good.
Yeah.
I search for words a lot of the times, but
Yeah.
people say I hide it well, so I have to keep trying.
Well, and you also have one of the most wonderful dispositions. Your kindness just is always so radiant throughout everything that you do.
Well,
And
thank you.
thank you for being a guest on the show today, because the insight that you're bringing to so many, I know, is going to help even one person to understand the condition much more.
Yeah.
I do want people to know about your sailing. You are not just a sailor; you're an accomplished sailor. And we've sailed together several times. And I mean, you do it with your eyes closed. You're so good at it. You were part of the. What was the name of that when we were at the yacht club there? Your picture's right up there in the yacht club in the
Oh, the
Australian Cup, right?
America's Cup.
America's Cup, where your
Yeah.
team actually won, right?
No, we didn't win,
Oh,
but
okay. You participated.
yeah, we participated. We're a bunch of young guys. I was a sailmaker for the team. Was a sailmaker as my job for several years.
Yeah.
So I was in the background working on the sails over there.
Yeah.
And but I used to race basically for a living because I'd sail with my customers and
Yeah.
try to make their boats go faster, kind of thing. So I
And
did
you've
a lot
done,
of that.
did you ever do the Van Isle 360? I think you had, hadn't you?
I
Or no?
haven't done that one. I did
Mm.
Swisher
Swisher, of
14
course.
times or something. Lots of races there. I
Yeah.
raced up and down the coast in different classes of boats. I didn't do any of the real long distance races.
Hmm.
I like to be home at after a night or two. I would like to be back home.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
sailing is fantastic, but it's true. It can be miserable, over a long haul if it's not necessarily a good sea.
well, the ocean racers are a different breed altogether. So,
Yeah, they sure are. They sure
yeah.
are. And now you had your sailboat. You no longer have your boat. What has that done to your system? That was like an arm of its own, an appendage of its own.
Yeah, well, I'm still not giving up hope, right? So
Good man.
um, at the moment, I'm getting my knees. I had my knees replaced. I'm going to see how my balance goes and to what extent I can go sailing. If they have to strap me onto the boat and I can go do a race with some friends, I will.
Yeah.
I think I could probably do something like that on a bigger boat that's quite forgiving. And, if it means I have to go down below and pass beer out to people, then I will.
That's right. And then you're still on the boat having a great time in the process, for sure.
Yeah.
So as I said, we had sort of started that part of the conversation with, that transition piece of what happened next, after when the symptoms really started to show up. I know that you were on a walker for a while. I think you were in a wheelchair for a little while. Can you break down some of those kind of processes, not only from a physical point of view, but from a with each hurdle, how you rose above?
Yeah. Well, it was through the joints and the Parkinson's that happened that I did fall on the dock there. I was using a cane at that point. Once I did that, I had a pinched nerve, and so I couldn't walk. So I was going up and down the dock and with a walker because I was living on my boat at the time.
Yes.
And so I'd go up and down the dock, and at low tide, I couldn't even leave the dock because it was too steep.
Yes,
So,
that would have been very difficult. My goodness.
so there I sat and waited, and the tide would come in, and people would stop and talk to me. And I guess on the good side, I met a lot of interesting people, and I did enjoy myself. And,
Did. Yeah, no kidding.
but I got admitted to hospital and finally in They just basically gave me a bit of an exercise program that it would gradually abate. They didn't have to do surgery for that. Meanwhile, during all this, the Parkinson thing is going on, and I was having to readjust my dosage for the drugs because they changed. So levodopa carbidopa is what it is that I'm taking. There was a product called Cinemat, which was the name brand one. Now they have a generic one as well. As the Cinemat became unavailable, so the potency is quite different, as I found out.
Right. And so what
So,
happened with that change of cocktail then?
well, that's when I was also at the time I fell. So, I
Mm.
was having freezing issues and that sort of thing. So,
Mm.
um, but anyway, I did get it changed, and I'm increasing dosage as I can, and the doctor assures me that there's still a bit of runway to go, and I can still get some, new and improved add-ons. So, one thing Michael J. Fox has been doing is he's an amazing advocate for the illness
Yeah.
or the disease, and things are progressing where they're finding ways to treat it. There's no cure,
Right.
but as yet, but they're making strides towards that. So
Well, I think he was working on stem cell research, wasn't he?
yeah, though they've looked into that, and
Mm.
he had there's brain surgeries you can get as well, which for the shakes, they put a deep brain stimulator. They have a surgery where they do that and install one of those in you, which I'll be looking at down the track. So I'll be discussing it anyway.
Yeah.
Whether I want another surgery, I think I've had enough for a while.
So how many surgeries have you had in total so far in the last 6 years?
I had a hip and a hip, so 2 hips, and my last surgery, I had both knees replaced at the same time.
So you're like the bionic man now, Steve
Pretty much.
Austin, the
Yeah,
man.
I'm all plastic and titanium.
As far as the healing has gone for you after the surgeries, have you found that the healing has been a slower progression since you've had the Parkinson's, or is it really the healing is still the healing as it would be under normal circumstances?
It is a little bit slower.
Yeah.
In that a lot of it is to do with confidence and my movement, and then with that you're not using it as much. But I'm fairly stubborn, so I do get out and get my walks in, and I just have to use the walker for now.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that I can get away with ski poles or something like that fairly soon. So
But the truth is the walker is a really helpful device, not only for moving you forward, but when you do get tired, you can sit really wherever you are, right?
yeah, that's
So,
great.
and I know a lot of men really, in all fairness, this is not to be, don't misunderstand by any means, anyone who's listening or watching the program, men don't like walkers, nor do women, but men seem to like them less. And so a lot of people have used walking poles and golf clubs and all kinds of things, but you
Yeah.
need this ability, and you can get some pretty, pretty decked out walkers for people. Oh,
Yeah, from I guess from a guy's point of view who isn't that old, it doesn't look cool.
no, I hear you.
But it does.
Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies if you do hear some background noise because this is a Zoom call and we are not in the studio at CHLY. You're going to hear my 2 dogs, Bobby Wilson and Jack Russell, as they chase down whatever happens to be going down the street. So we appreciate your patience during that small interruption. Yeah, no, you're right. It's not a check magnet to be walking with a walker for sure. It can have its moments.
You have to check with all this stuff, you have to check your ego at the door though, and do what you have to do, right? So,
and I think that that's a really important part of this conversation, because I think that there's so many illnesses out there. I mean, and right now as well with COVID-19, and I'm going to break that open with you in a moment, but people don't realize, there's a lot of people walking around that look very healthy, that look, like everything is going their way. You see Facebook posts and people are just doing so incredibly well. And what you don't know is that so many people are dealing with things like Parkinson's disease or arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, ALS, you know, it's more than COVID right now and more than cancer, right? There's burdens to be bared in so many people's lives that we, you know, I just really feel it's important that we take the knowledge of the fact that just because somebody looks okay doesn't necessarily mean that they are, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, you get right into it. You talk to almost anybody you talk to has gone through or knows somebody going through or is, going through themselves something, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and you kind of take. Well, I noticed that in sales when someone who sort of barks at you, don't get mad at them because it's not you. It's something that's happened or is happening to them, right?
Yeah, and you don't know what somebody else's story is, and I think that that's really the key. I wish we did. I mean, there have been some great videos that have been out there where people have had, you know, these little balloon things over their heads that say, you know, just a survivor of breast cancer or a survivor, or, you know, just been diagnosed with Parkinson's or just been diagnosed with, you know, ulcerative colitis or whatever it is, or someone has just died, or someone, I mean, we just don't know what's going on in other people's lives. And so by the
Yeah.
grace of God go I when we walk ahead, you know, for recognizing that we all have a story and something's going on for people.
Yeah. And, the people that I know, like, I just had coffee with a friend of mine who just had cancer.
Yeah.
And it's gone in remission now. He had surgery and caught it early. But I mean, he went through that, and it's just is so much out there. But just the positive, if you have a positive outlook, that's kind of what gets you through. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of wonderful things out there. So gotta keep going.
you got to keep going, and you got to, like, it's one foot in front of the other, and even if you fall down, you get back up and you do whatever it is that you can do to, you know, take care of yourself and the people that you love. Your system is changing by the day. We were talking a little bit about your medications. Can we talk a little bit about how those medications have worked for you, in the sense of, like, did you try several different cocktails? Has it been, you know,
Yeah.
like, how has that experience been during this process?
Well, it's actually it's been a little bit of rough patches in there. Some good, some rough. The one that I'm on now, the levodopa carbidopa, is effective, as is the antidepressant, because Parkinson's brings some pretty dark emotions at times, and so I think that's been crucial as well. There's a high rate of people that actually have suicide because of that. It's not really that well known, but it's a big thing. I was on a product that, had all the warnings of it, but it makes you behave a bit irrationally. So I had and kind of giddy in a way too. Just it was an overrush of what am I trying to say? The
Dopamine or whatever.
dopamine. Thank you,
Yes.
dopamine. It was like an overrush of dopamine,
Mm.
and it just made you kind of strange. Made me kind of strange.
Did you feel like you were high or
Yeah,
manic?
a little manic is the word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And
but
so many drugs will do that to you. You know, prednisone will do that. You know, besides antidepressants and some of the other, you know, chemo and things like that, that can make you very, you know, manic, very spun out, and not necessarily having control. And that in itself is another process, because now I would imagine that you're trying to process, why am I acting like this? And your family, I mean, how were the people around you trying to understand why your behavior was different?
yeah, that's very true. And you it's strange because you don't suddenly you sit there and you go, this isn't me. I
Yeah.
don't feel like myself, right? So you kind of go through those with the different drugs that you're taking. In this, is you almost change your personality a little bit. I don't think mine's really changed, but in my own head, it's changing around a little bit.
What do you think has been the biggest, overall, the biggest impact on your life since you've been diagnosed?
Um, I would say just the that I'm not able to do. I'm a fairly active person now, so here I am. I mean, I like to, go out and do things, and I'm not able to do that anymore at the
Yeah.
moment. So, like I say, I haven't given up, but the balance is a big issue.
Yeah.
For trail walks and hiking and things like that, which I enjoy. And, I like playing sports. I like playing tennis. I like playing beach volleyball you
Yeah.
know, before my second hip went, I was playing beach volleyball.
Yeah.
That's when I had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, but,
You're still functioning. It was still okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, not now, so it has taken its toll.
Yeah.
So, you just have to modify it. I've got a little sailboat game on the computer, so I can play virtual sailing.
And it works, right? I mean, that keeps your brain certainly occupied in doing things. But, I would imagine that there must be some very dark times for you when you're sort of sitting by yourself and you're thinking to yourself, what do I do? Who am I now?
Yeah, it's difficult. You get inside your head for sure.
Yeah.
And like some of the hardest points are, when you're with family and loved ones and you don't, I guess you kind of get into the people pleaser thing where you just don't want to be a burden.
Yep.
So you don't say anything. And, at the end of the day, they say goodbye or goodnight or what have you. It's like, well, it's a good thing your Parkinson's isn't progressing. You seem fine. Yeah, I'm fine. No, you're not.
No, you're not. You're just trying to hold it all together and keep yourself,
And that's when it's tough, when you get by yourself and you just, unless you have someone to talk to, which I do. I'm lucky,
Yeah.
but a lot of folks in my circles don't get to hear it because I don't want to be a burden, and I don't want to be that person that's always talking about that stuff, right? And
Yeah. We don't want to be our disease, do we?
correct, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something more. There's something more.
It's your partner, but it's not you.
Yeah. 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 It's an aspect of who you are, but it's not who you are for sure.
Yeah, that's how I look at it too.
So I'm curious of whether or not you had, in the perspective of self-care, what does self-care look like for you at this stage of your life?
Well, the self-care is there's a lot of things that you can do that they say will help. And before I started getting all messed up physically, I was doing a lot of gym and keeping quite fit and sitting on the bicycle at the gym and doing weights.
Mm-hmm.
And it was helping me. So I intend on, as soon as not as soon as, very shortly, I will be going after my physio runs out. I'm going back to the gym and I'm going to start exercising regularly.
And
So,
with COVID, it's kind of hard right now because the gyms, I think the gyms are just starting at the time of the taping.
yeah,
Many gyms are just still closed. Our Steve Nash here closed permanently. Fitness World has taken its place. There's a lot of gyms on Vancouver Island,
yeah,
but for wherever you're watching, certainly you're quite right, because the exercise piece doesn't just help with the body's physical side. It helps with the dopamine in the brain and all of the happy things that happen for the
yeah.
top. Yeah.
It
So
releases endorphins for sure.
that's right. That's the word I was looking for, and I didn't know. I couldn't find that word either.
Yeah.
You don't have to have Parkinson's not to have your word.
That's right. It's just turning over 50, right?
Oh my God! And in my case, it's turning closer to 60, and so
Yeah,
that.
no, you're not that old.
Oh, I am, darling. I am. I'm getting there. Couple more years. I'm not far off. That's for sure. But at the end of the day, I think about how you try to remain positive. You do the best that you can. The support groups. Have you found yourself working with any support groups, or do we have
That's
agencies to support, whether it's online, through the internet? Like, how do you manage that part?
that's a great question, and that's something that I should be doing more. And I think I will look into that. There is locally in Nanaimo, there is a support group, which I went to initially, and I wasn't ready for it yet because I hadn't accepted my journey. But I really should get back in there and start sharing things with people, because they do things like there's boxing classes, which
Yes.
things you can do, like right left, anything you can do that has kind of a rhythm to it, or you can count.
Yeah.
They say that helps a lot. So, I'm sort of, that's the next stage, one of the next stages for me too.
I know that in Parksville there is I will, if, when this goes to YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, we do have thank you for tuning in. By the way, you've tuned into Act 3 on CHLY 101.7. We have a very lovely presence on YouTube for some of these programs and for our television program as well, which is through Shaw Spotlight, coming to us in September. So right about the time that this has been aired, our new program will be out there. But they have in Parksville a thing called, oh my gosh, it'll be in the description box. But anyway, yeah, it's a boxing class. You can actually, if you Google it through Shaw Spotlight, you will probably find some information on it. And it's for people specifically who have Parkinson's disease. And
Right.
apparently it's extraordinary.
Yeah, and it's basically all about the movement. You don't go belting each other.
Exactly,
So,
exactly. And if you do, you're belting them with, what do you call it? Those like
the pads.
cool, women, those soft, cushiony, fun things, as opposed to.
Yeah, and it's basically you hold the pad up and you right, left, right, left, right, left, and a lot of people really enjoy it as well, from what I understand. So.
Well, I would imagine it gets a fair amount of aggression, hey? Like that frustration that goes on moment by moment is like, and then you could go and like release some of that energy into a very positive way.
The movement itself is really good too, just doing that, and it gets your body going. It gets, like you said before, it releases the endorphins, and it makes a big difference when you start getting that happening. So swimming is another thing I do recommend. Of course, prior to COVID, it's something I had been doing, and that helped my back immensely as well, and strengthens all your muscles. There's no impact.
Yes.
And it's a, if you're swimming, you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, or whatever. There's a counting aspect to it, and I find for myself that when I'm in the water, I don't feel like I have any disease.
Yes.
I can swim like I used to. So, it feels very good.
Yeah. So I'm curious then, how long will it be now? Do you think much longer for your body, for the knee surgery now? You've had the 2 replacements. How recent was that?
7 weeks, I suppose, I guess it would be now. So relatively short term right now. It's coming on 8 weeks.
And they figure it'll be another 8 or 10 weeks before it's somewhat healed up, or?
Yeah, they said you should have, I've got my range of motion back, which is great. And it's just a matter of practicing, because I haven't really walked properly for 1.5 years. So it's retraining myself to do that. And, the Parkinson's taking away your muscle strength a little bit too. So that's a bit of a challenge still, but I just gotta have to be patient and keep at it.
So what do you do for self-talk? What do you say to yourself when you're really, really going through those moments of, where you want to use all kinds of, words that we can't say on the radio or on other broadcast measures? Like, how do you reconcile that frustration?
Kind of break it down
Yeah.
a little bit. Like I just kind of go backwards a little bit, and you sort of go into the dark place a little bit and go, wait a minute, what's different now than it was a couple hours ago? Nothing. Okay, so here's the good, here's the good, here's the good, here's the good. So you start, making little lists and just sort it out with yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But you have to make sure you do that, because it's pretty easy just to go into like the dark place and not swing back out again. But it doesn't take long, actually, or even reach out and talk to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking to other people, I would imagine, is probably one of the best things that you could do. What has this disease taught you?
It's taught me a little bit of that I'm not invincible, for one thing. With the diseases that I got, I mean, I used to be fairly active, and I didn't really appreciate what I had, with your health and your fitness and that sort of thing. Yeah. Kind of take it for granted, and since I've been having this when I'm on my times where I've been injured or what have you, and having a harder time, I just, see people walking, and it's like kind of, oh wow, that's so nice. I wish I could do that again. Then it kind of inspires me. But I guess I've also learned that I can dig deep and I can keep positive and overcome adversity quite a bit. So it's a daily challenge, but some days are easier than others. And like I said before, is just keep going and try to keep a good attitude.
Yeah. How
So,
did your family react to the diagnosis?
they they didn't really know what to say, and
Yeah.
I can kind of understand that too because they didn't understand it. They're very supportive though.
Of course, I have no doubt that they would be
Yeah,
supportive.
but
But I would
yeah,
imagine that for them, it must have been like, I can tell you that when I was told that you had been diagnosed, and I was told a few years ago, my jaw dropped. It was like, what? Like, what? I couldn't. I mean, you and I hadn't seen each other in quite some time. I think
yeah,
we ran into each other in the mall. I was going in, or the movie theater, and you were going in, and I was going out. Uh,
right.
and I think that we saw each other for like first time in several years, anyway. And so when I learned of your condition at that time, you weren't attached to any assisting device. So you weren't wearing a cane or walking with a walker or anything like that.
Well,
Um, but I know
still
that when I
walking.
first heard it, I went, boom, like that just, it's not, this is not cool. This is not good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a shock.
Yeah.
And it's it's a gradual thing and sneaks up on you and just you start going through it a little bit more as years go by. But um, sometimes when you're feeling it and you're not showing it as much, it's even more frustrating because you can't say anything really, and people say, "Oh, you look great," and you're like, "Oh God, I feel like
You only
garbage."
knew. If you only knew.
Yeah, I don't
Dave,
feel great.
does it hurt?
Doesn't really hurt. It's more like a muscle cramp at times.
Yeah.
You get the kind of like muscle cramps and um, just discomfort, I guess, more than anything.
Hmm.
The arthritis hurts.
And is the arthritis still presenting? It didn't.
Well,
Not. Of course, I would imagine it still would present, but being that your knees have now been replaced and your hips have been replaced, which is where the arthritis was,
yeah,
how is it manifesting now? Because hopefully those replacements would have taken at least some of that away. Yes, or
totally did. It was. I mean, it's the hips don't hurt, and the knees are still recovering a little bit. So probably another month or 2 months of that, and they'll be better. And that's when I'm hoping I'm going to be walking again.
walking and dancing and doing all of the groovy stuff.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
I'm curious about, that initial diagnosis. So you go through the initial diagnosis and then you begin processing. So I would imagine the shock of it really goes in the beginning, but the grief process, like I've come to this place where I hate the words new normal. I've gotten to there. We've overused it. It's a buzzword that's, it seems to be attached to everything when life is different. But
Yeah.
was anything ever really normal in the first place, right? As you said, you were dealing with the arthritis already. You were dealing with this and that were causing some definite, changes in your body. But to sort of recreate what life will look like to you walking ahead, pardon the pun, how has the grief process played an impact in your processing of all of this?
A lot of it was in the initial stages of it,
Yep.
and the grief and anger, and why. Um, I don't really have the grief at this time. Really, it's more like, I know what you say with the new normal. It's like I like to think of it as evolving and devolving.
Yes.
It's more like this for
An ebb and flow kind of thing almost.
yeah, from what my experience and what I'm going through
Yeah.
is like that. But yeah, sorry, what was it?
No, you
I
got
kind
it.
of,
Like, just that grieving process and whether or not it's still with you, or whether
yeah,
you
right.
you know
And
what is acceptance, I guess, is probably a better question at this point, because as you said, it's ebbing and flowing. What
and
does
it,
acceptance look like?
the acceptance is kind of like, it's still kind of ongoing, because you're not suddenly, your arm gets chopped off. Then you go through the pretty steady range of emotion, I think.
Yeah.
And that with this, you start losing different things. So you get ticked off at certain different times,
Mm-hmm.
right, depending on what's happening. And then you get, for instance, when you get the new drug comes out, or you change your drugs and it helps, and you go, oh God, there's another little bit of a lease on life. It seems like it buys you time, and then you go up again. So
Yeah, for sure. Do
yeah.
you, do you see any changes? Like, are the changes for you now gradual, or have there been some very, where you can almost pinpoint specific situations that have really, I don't know, stuck with you, where that has been, okay, I've seen a modification of what's happening. So in other words, maybe you had a little bit of, I'm assuming, okay, forgive me for this. This is my ignorance coming through very clearly. So your hand perhaps begins to shake a little bit. And so that's like a mark that on the calendar in my brain. I know that this is a pivotal change. And then, several weeks later, you may notice a joint issue in another part of your body. Have you had a few of those kind of systematic, oh, I'm not getting better, or, oh, this is a new transition, or a new
Yeah.
elevation of this in my being?
It seems to have gone in kind of stages where it goes slow,
Yeah.
gradual, and then clunk, something, over a period of a couple of months, maybe, or a month.
Yeah.
Things will sort of deteriorate a little bit, and then change, and then slow again, and then clunk, something else will happen. I think I probably lost more in the past year than I had during the time before. I was actually progressing reasonably slowly,
Yeah.
until I started falling down and that sort of thing, which kind of,
But the falling down actually puts you in a good place, in the sense that you were aware now that you needed different drugs, and you needed to have your knees done.
right, yeah.
Yes. No, I don't know. I'm guessing. So.
Well, unfortunately, the knees, just, you have to wait your turn, because I knew my knees needed doing, and but
So were the knees a direct result of the Parkinson's then, Dave, or were the?
no,
Okay.
that's like my twofold thing. I've got osteoarthritis and Parkinson's.
So the knees were about the osteoarthritis, then not about the Parkinson's at all.
That's right. And
Do you typically have to have, sorry to interrupt you, do you typically have to have surgery for Parkinson's in any way, or would it always be or not always, but often be a complementary or coexisting?
Yeah, it's just a coexisting thing. As far as surgeries for Parkinson itself, the only surgery is really the deep brain stimulation, which stops your tremors.
Yeah, other than
It can
that,
provide some release. So, but yeah, no, I'm just sort of relaying that I've got sort of both issues going. So my falls were a result of the freezing, the change in drugs, and the arthritis led to certain things. So, having the double whammy is made it a bit tricky.
Indeed. Yeah. I'm going to ask a hard question, and you don't have to answer this. I know that I'm putting you on the spot, and I do not like throwing people under the bus. So if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. But I'm curious what your biggest fear is in having this disease at this stage of your life.
Not being able to get out of my house and get out anymore, and just being alone.
Yeah. Yeah, completely understandable. Your kids don't live local either. They're in Australia and other parts of the world.
Right.
And I know you did recently enjoy their company. That must have been just extraordinary for you.
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah. I saw all of them. My son's going to be living in Chicago, but he's in Australia at the moment, and I was in Australia, and with my daughters as well. So I've got 3 kids.
And you came home to COVID-19.
I did.
Self-isolation. How has that experience been for you? Having
Well,
Parkinson and then COVID comes, like, oh my God, boom.
yeah, it's a crazy world, yeah, I just hope that something happens that goes away.
Are you nervous about COVID, having Parkinson with your resistant, not your resistance, there's another word for it, when you're resistance, I guess, when your body is less, the immune system isn't as generous to
Yeah,
people that have pre-existing conditions?
yeah, I really don't know as far as probably to do with your muscle control, like in your esophagus, like
Yeah,
choking and that sort of
yeah,
thing. So I imagine if you got the breathing problems, you'd be prone to pneumonia a bit more. So
absolutely.
it's something that I wouldn't want to get.
No. Do you wear a mask when you're in public now, or do you
Yeah.
go out that often at this point? And
Well,
certainly
yeah, I
encourage
try to get out.
people to wear
I
a
use
mask.
my walker,
Yeah,
and I do wear. When I'm outside, generally I don't, but if I'm inside at all, I do wear it.
yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, I'm an advocate for self protecting each other, right?
yeah,
I don't wear a mask because I'm afraid that I'm going to get COVID. I'm afraid that I would be in contact with something and give it to somebody else who's in a vulnerable state, and I would not want to
yeah.
pass that forward to anybody. I
No,
mean,
we have to take care of each other that way for
we
sure.
do. And Dr. Bonnie Henry has been very clear. We are taking care of each other. This isn't an individual thing. It's you're taking care of the people that you love, and you want to, and even the people that you don't know. You can really be of benefit to supporting those around you by ensuring that you mask up whenever you go out, and wash your hands and take all those other precautions. But particularly for people who have a more compromised system, we really want to be careful that we protect them. And I would want to protect you, Dave, if I knew that I could potentially ever give you anything by being in your presence. It would break my heart. So, I'm going to mask up when we get a chance to see each other in person as well.
Yeah, and as I will too.
We're almost at the end of the program, which has gone so fast, as it always does. It goes way too fast. Oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
goes way too fast. We're already almost at an hour together. If you've just tuned in, you're listening to Act 3 Radio on CHLY 101.7. Our guest has been Dave Hingley, who is a Parkinson's. You're not I don't want to call it a survivor, because
Yeah.
you were not dying. You're
Uh,
evolving. So what would we call that? You're a Parkinson's champion.
sure.
I'd prefer if you labeled it yourself. Not that
Well,
there needs to be a label, in all fairness, right?
me and Parkinson's having a little argument right now, so I don't want to give it any power.
All right, don't give it any. Push that back. Push that back. But for anybody who listens to the program, they know that my biggest thing is I want to make sure that we imbibe upon our audience that one teachable moment, that one piece kernel of wisdom that we can leave with somebody if they find themselves in just wisdom. I just want wisdom. So if you could talk to somebody or even to your younger self, about your situation with Parkinson, what would you want that person to know?
um, do what you can when you can is one thing. I mean, there was a lot of things that I still wanted to do, and when I did, get diagnosed, that I did a lot of things that I might never have done.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, that I gained a lot of joy in my life, actually, with travels and seeing different places in the world, and just taking a couple of steps that were I might have been a bit too conservative or scared to do. So I've done that, and now I just have to figure out the next step.
But the first step is to go live your life and have a grand time doing it, regardless of your
You
situation.
only got one, and
You only got one.
if your health's gone, then you don't want to have any regrets.
Wise words coming from a very, very, very wise man. Thank you so much for being my guest today on Act 3. It has been a privilege to talk with you. Thank you for everything in this
Thank
conversation.
you, Cathy. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for tuning in to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 in Nanaimo, or if you're tuning in to our Act 3 media on which is at www.act3mediaproductions.com, or on our YouTube channel, please join us there. Remember, our new television program will be starting in the middle of September on Shaw Spotlight, and so we look forward to sharing with you all kinds of groovy stuff as that comes forward. And Dave will happen to be one of our guests on our very first program, so we can't wait to share more wisdom with you. Once again, thanks for tuning in. Have yourself a great day. We'll see you next week.